Hey folks, today we've had a new patch released for Crusader Kings 3. This is some bug fixing, some balancing, even some little additional content as well for the game. So as always, I'm just going to go through the patch notes. I will say there's a lot of bug fixes here, so I've just highlighted the most important ones, or at least the more interesting ones. As always, I will leave a link to this post in the description down below, so you can go through and read all the bug fixes. But like I say, there was a lot, so I've just highlighted the most important ones. But you can see here first, the balancing side. We did think some balancing was coming, and there is some here. Not too much around landless characters. I thought maybe we'd get a little bit more. So the first thing is they've severely reduced the maintenance cost of Acritize. They say here they were way higher than intended. I'm not sure. I never had any of these since the patch came out, so I guess they were just crazy high for maintenance. Increase the AI weights for estate building slightly. This just means that the AI will actually build estate buildings. I hadn't noticed this myself, but it looks like they were just building holdings, concentrating more on like the normal kind of buildings you can build, and they weren't actually investing in their estate. And if you've played in a admin government, you know your estate's really important, so it looks like they're going to focus on that a little bit more. Landless admin characters can no longer use the request governorship interaction on titles held by non-admin rulers. This is a pretty good change, to be honest, a pretty good balance change, because yeah, you could just grab titles off feudal or, you know, tribal or clan rulers that were part of your realm, and that didn't really make that much sense, to be honest. Change the AI slightly for how often it is going to use the adopt state faith decision. Reduce the base chance and made zealous characters to never want to do it, but they have added some additional modifiers that increase the overall chance of this happening, so they will convert more likely. Although again, kind of cutting out zealous characters, because they're much less likely to just change their faith on a whim. Another change around this decision, it is now available to all vassals regardless of government type when the top liege has a state faith. That just makes sense. I kind of thought that's how it worked anyway, but I guess it wasn't. Adjusted the AI acceptance for requesting a council position in exchange for influence to make it much harder to become a councillor. This was way too easy. You could just get a decent amount of influence and then get on the council immediately and just start getting those benefits way too easily. So that has been changed, a lot harder to do that. The next change is that instead of making it more likely for the AI to adopt admin government if they have the hereditary hierarchy cultural tradition, the tradition will instead reduce their willingness. So basically the opposite of how it worked now. And then the last change here, updated the cost logic in the deposed governor interaction and how it uses governor efficiency to influence the cost. I imagine this is to make it a lot harder to do. I'm not too sure though, it just says it's adjusted. Doesn't say whether it's to make it harder or easier, more likely to succeed or not, but I guess it's probably going to make it harder to use this, I would think. And that is all the balance changes. Next is the bug fixes. As I said, a lot of bug fixes, so I've just highlighted the most important ones, or at least the ones I thought were more interesting. The top one, kind of coupled with the one earlier, fixed the AI never updating more than one internal slot in their domiciles. So they weren't building buildings, and then even when they were building the buildings, they weren't building the internal slots as well. So really missing out on some bonuses from that. Fixed the game lobbies so you can now create landless adventures in theocratic and republic realms. That's going to be a cool one. Made sure that not every single member of a faction can be forced to be there. So as they point out here, kind of funny where everyone was forced to be there, but actually nobody wanted to start the rebellion. A kind of a funny situation that could in theory happen. They've got rid of that being the case. Clarified the X Path to Ascension tooltip to inform players that the holy site must be of the faith that you worship. This one does make sense. It is how it worked, but again, just kind of covering off the tooltip. So it actually spelt that out to you. I think it was pretty obvious if you were a Catholic player trying to do this that you would have to have a Catholic holy site. But I guess there was a case if you were new to the game especially where you would just say, oh, holy site? Well, I'll just get any holy site, but it had to be the one of your faith. The next one is the biggest change. I feel like this should be further up and just like super highlighted, because we will now display how many marriageable characters a ruler has when making the request for a marriage, including filtering out anyone who's unlikely to be offered in the marriage. Now, this has probably been my biggest complaint as a landless character, is that when you went to the user marriage interaction with any patrons that you had, it wouldn't tell you if they had anybody, and it would also cost you the prestige as soon as you press the button, even if they had nobody eligible for you to actually marry. So if you pressed it, went in, they had nobody you could marry, you don't get the prestige back. It's just kind of like a pointless press of the button and you got nothing out of it. This is fantastic. If it works the way they say, I guess you're going to have like a little number there that will tell you. They will have like 5 people you could marry, and then you're going to press that button in that case. Like, this is a fantastic change. This should be the top one, I think, because this is one of my biggest problems with unlanded characters, and especially trying to find a husband or a wife. It was just super annoying to actually try use this request. whereas now it looks like it's actually going to be usable, or at least you're going to know if you're going to get something out of it. Kind of like the gold one, where you could press it and it would say, if you do this, you're going to get 60 gold. Oh, I'll do that then. The marriage one, you'd just be guessing as to whether you get anything out of it. Probably the best thing in all these patch notes, to be honest. Anyway, the next one is fix the admin request council position interaction, which was not refunding any of the spent influence. It will now refund you half the cost if your liege declines, and they've updated the decision to tell you that as well. So a good change here. You are still losing stuff if you're just trying to spam this to get one, but it's better than literally getting nothing as it currently worked. Again, kind of tied into that last one where it was a button that you'd press and sometimes get nothing out of it. Next one is fix the cost of archery in duel tournaments if you have the militia camp or blacksmith building. It now properly gives you the 50% cost reduction rather than the 10%. I hadn't noticed this, but that is a pretty big bug. So if you do have those buildings, you were thinking, why aren't my things cheaper? It's because of a bug, and that is going to be fixed in the update as well today. And the next one is another one I've noticed in all my campaigns during my live streams. We actually were laughing at this the other day. Loyalty or fear events will no longer assume landless rulers have vassals. Again, this was just a funny one where the event would talk about your vassals, and I'd just be like, I don't have any vassals, but the whole event would talk about them all the way through it. I guess it was just kind of like not reworded for landless characters. But it looks like they are going to fix that. Again, not really a massive issue. It's just it kind of took you out of being a landless character in a way. Especially if you roleplay a lot, it kind of took you out of it a little bit, having all this stuff talking about vassals and things like that. The next one, a massive change here, guys. I'm not even sure how this is being changed. It's such a nerf to the game. Reduce frequency of spectacles for Scholar Camp characters by 75%. Just a silly change here, but I do like it. I don't really like the glasses on characters in the game. I think they kind of look a bit stupid, so I'm actually really happy about this change, but there you go. That is a little nerf in some ways. The next two are around the forming Rome decision. Again, some good changes here. Fix the Byzantine throne room so it will stay after you form Rome. If you're not aware, as soon as you form Rome, it would just revert to a generic throne room. This is allowing you to keep the Byzantine one. And the second change, kind of linked to that as well, is if you form Rome as the Byzantine Empire, the capital will stay in Byzantium. It won't move you to Rome, which is really bad. Obviously, Rome is pretty decent, but if you've been playing in the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople is probably going to be way better than Rome is. So I know a lot of people had an issue with this, and they are fixing it, which is great. And with that, that is all the bug fixes I picked out. As I said, there's like 100 at least, I think. And a lot of changes are pretty minor, but do go and read them if you're interested in some other things. The next changes are all around interface. When traveling to a domicile, such as a camp, a 3D model of a cart and horses is now going to be shown on the map, which is awesome. It's no longer just going to be you walking around. You're actually going to have a model of cart and horses moving your camp around the map. I think that's an awesome change. Just a little thing. This was actually something we were talking about recently again on one of the live streams about the upcoming event pack, which is the next bit of DLC we're getting, which is all around traveling and things like that. The other change I've picked out in this section is they've revamped the duel event window. So what this entails, I'm not too sure. I'll jump into the game after making this video and take a look. I can't imagine it's anything too crazy, but I imagine they've just cleaned it up a little bit, changed the tooltips, I would think, so they're a little bit more readable, I would imagine. And then nothing else really outside of that that's too crazy. The next section is history. And here they've added some extra landless adventures to 1066 and 867. This is an awesome change. I have seen some complaints in the community saying there aren't really that many options here. And yeah, they've obviously heard that, added some landless adventurers so you can go in there and have some more options. And the second one is universities of Bologna and Oxford are now constructed if you start the game in 1178. So if you play in those locations, you can have a nice little bonus and university to begin with. And that is all the historical changes. The next thing is game content. So again, as they were talking earlier, added a new map cart model for when you are moving your camp. Again, just a nice little change there. They've added some new game concepts for principal thematic armies. So this is just going to be there to kind of teach you how this works in the game, which is great, especially for new players. Added some new events when you, as an admin ruler, change government to better explain why and when your government changes. Added a new effect for the mortal adoration perk in the intrigue lifestyle, allowing rulers to request provincial troops from lovers. That's just a nice little bonus. And then the next one is very similar, but in the diplomacy lifestyle. So you can get troops from your friends instead of your lovers. So just some additional functionality in the lifestyle trees there for admin rulers, which is cool. Added a new decision for admin governments, allowing a character to renounce all and any claims to gain the throne, preventing the AI from supporting you and significantly reducing your candidate score. So this is so you can play the governorship game, but you won't become the emperor. So this is cool if you just want to play in the Byzantine Empire, you just want to play the governor game, kind of play the house mechanics, all that kind of stuff, but you don't want to become the emperor. You turn this on and then you can't ever be the emperor, but you can move around the governorships. So it doesn't like fully cut you off from some of the mechanics, but it does prevent you becoming the emperor, which is great. Hopefully when they do a full HRE rework, we get something like this as well. How this works. I know they've already put in the options so you can prevent yourself becoming the emperor. But again, like this, maybe you could move around the princelings or something like that in some way, but you don't have to worry about becoming the emperor. So again, another cool change here, just letting players play the game how they want to. The next one is setting a new culture for a character. Now looks for a cultural appropriate name equivalent to the name equivalency scripted list. So this is just making sure your character kind of matches your culture. And then outside of that, there's just a few minor game content changes, which again, you can read in the patch notes if you're interested. And with that, that is the end of the hotfix. Some great changes here, especially around the marriage thing with patrons, around the AI with buildings, and of course, adding the cart to the map for your camp movement is pretty cool as well. I will say I'm kind of surprised we didn't get more landless adventurer nerfs, or not nerfs necessarily, maybe some kind of balancing around how they can build up their armies so well and how powerful they are. I know they've taken one swing at that already. Maybe they're waiting to see how it plays out in the game before they make any more changes. One idea I've had is maybe just make it harder to get regiments from your patrons. Maybe increase the amount of opinion you have to spend to get it. Maybe have that scaling in some way, so if you have a reasonable sized army, they're less likely to give it to you. You could do some like in-game reason. Like they could come back and say, well, you know, if I give you more troops, you could actually be a threat to me, so I don't want to give you any more men-at-arms. Maybe I'll give you a replenishment of your men-at-arms instead, something like that, so you can get something out of it that's linked to men-at-arms, just so you can't stack up obscene amounts of men-at-arms relatively quickly. If you do a lot of contracts close to each other, you can build up an army really fast, and we do know, even with these slight nerfs that we've had, the landless adventure armies are just so good. I feel like they do need to do something to balance it. I have talked about this before, where I don't want them to change it to the fact where it's not enjoyable to play them. I know it's too easy. I see that everywhere. Like, it's way too easy to play as a landless adventurer. They just get too powerful. And that is probably the case, but it's also kind of fun to play it. I don't want them to nerf it to the point where it's not fun to play them anymore, but it's balanced. I'd rather have something that's not balanced and fun to play, where it just gets bogged down in annoying mechanics and things like that, so you won't actually ever play it. But anyway, that's just my idea. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let me know if you have any ideas about how they could balance the landless armies. They could just nerf the regiments, but I don't think that really works that well. I think they should leave that alone and just balance how many troops you can get, or something around that. Maybe change how knights work so they affect things more often, or something like that. As I said, we'll leave it there for today. Hit that like button if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new here. I cover a lot of Crusader Kings on the channel. I do weekly campaign live streams, all that good stuff. And I also cover Project Caesar, aka EU5, on the channel as well, in a similar manner, if you're interested in that upcoming game. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you in the next one.